New Mexico Territory, 1874. Just outside the dust-choked town of Dry Creek, May Harper staggered down the empty road, with blood in her shoe and a drunken outlaw closing in fast behind her. Jeb Tanner's horse snorted as he grabbed her by the hair, yanking her off her feet like she wasn't even human. She clawed at the ground, breath breaking, knowing no one in this valley ever lifted a hand for a girl like her. His whiskey-soaked laugh echoed off the rocks as he dragged her toward the saddle. "If I disappear here, no one will remember I ever lived," she thought, terror slicing straight through her chest. Before we continue, if you're watching this from anywhere in the world, leave your city name in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. May Harper had been walking long enough for the sun to feel like a punishment. Her boots, if those torn, flapping things still deserved the name, bit into her feet with every step. Dust clung to her legs, her skirt, her hair. She felt less like a woman and more like a stray animal limping toward nowhere. But nowhere was still better than where she'd come from. Her breath hitched as she spotted the wooden sign far ahead. Dry Creek, 2 miles. 2 miles might as well have been 200 with the way her legs shook, but her stubborn heart whispered, just a little more. She clutched the small cloth pouch against her chest, her only possession. A worn Bible, some coins, and a handful of papers she didn't understand. They were the last pieces of a life she'd lost before she even knew how to protect it. A sharp cry escaped her as her knee buckled. She caught herself on her hands, grit scraping her skin. For a moment she stayed there, trembling, eyes unfocused. And then she heard him. "May! You think you can run from me?" Jeb Tanner's voice slithered across the wind before he did. Loud, drunk, and full of the kind of ownership that made her stomach twist. She barely managed to get upright before the pounding hooves closed in. Jeb reined his horse hard, skidding dust all over her. His grin was the kind that came from whiskey and entitlement. "Well, look here," he drawled, leaning down. "My runaway girl. Thought you'd slip away before I collected what's mine." May shook her head weakly. "I never belonged to you." He grabbed her hair so fast she didn't even gasp. Pain flashed across her scalp as he yanked her upward like lifting a rag. Her pouch fell from her hands, spilling papers into the dirt. Jeb kicked them aside and snorted. "Still carrying that junk? Girl, I don't know who you stole these from, but they ain't worth spit." She clawed at his wrist, panic clawing through her chest even faster. She had been dragged by men before, cornered, ignored, paid for, and she refused to let it happen again. But her body had nothing left. Her strength was just memory. "Please." The word slipped out before she could stop it, and she hated herself for it. Jeb laughed, loud and cruel. "That's more like it." Her foot slipped, and she fell sideways. Jeb didn't bother holding her. He simply reached for her again. But his hand froze mid-air. A shadow settled across the road. Slow, solid, unmoving. A black horse, tall, dust shaken off its mane like it was bored with the world. And the man on its back, quiet, broad-shouldered, skin dark as river stone, hat brim low, eyes unreadable. Elijah Cole didn't shout, didn't puff up like other men would. He simply sat there, reins loose in one hand, the other resting near the rope at his belt, calm, as if nothing could truly rattle him. "That's enough," he said. Just 2 words, but the weight of them landed heavy. Jeb blinked, thrown off. "And who the hell are you?" Elijah didn't answer right away. He let the silence say what it needed to. His gaze flicked from Jeb to May, lingering a moment longer on her shaking hands. Then he spoke, voice even. "Let the lady go." Jeb barked a laugh. "Lady? This one?" He gave May a shove with his boot. "She's saloon trash. I paid good money for her." "No," Elijah said, sharper now. "You didn't." Something in his tone made Jeb flinch. Not fear, offense, like someone beneath him had forgotten their place. "You want to rethink how you talk to me, colored boy?" Jeb hissed, grabbing the gun at his hip. May's heart nearly stopped, but Elijah didn't reach for his own gun. Instead, his gloved fingers lifted the rope from his saddle horn, smoothly, almost lazily. "You're drunk," he said, "and you're making bad choices." "You think you can stop me?" Jeb spat. "I already did." Jeb barely processed the words before the rope flew. Clean, precise, practiced. It looped around his wrist, then his gun, then his entire forearm in one breathtaking twist. Elijah gave a single tug, and Jeb yelped as the gun flew from his hand, spinning into the dirt. May watched with widening eyes. Elijah dismounted, moved like water and iron all at once, never rushing, never panicking. He twisted the rope, flipped Jeb onto his back, and planted a boot on the outlaw's chest. Isaiah, a small boy with sharp, bright eyes, peeked from behind Elijah's saddle. "Uncle Eli," he called, "you need help?" "No," Elijah said calmly. "I got him." May stared, breathless. Not because Elijah saved her. Men had saved her before, only to demand something later. No, this was different. Elijah didn't look at her like she was a thing. He barely looked at her at all. His focus was on keeping violence from spreading. Jeb writhed under the rope. "My father will buy this whole damn valley, your worthless land included." Elijah ignored him. "Isaiah, take his horse. Lead him back toward town. Sheriff can figure out how drunk he is." Isaiah nodded eagerly and began tugging Jeb's horse forward, with the prisoner stumbling behind like a furious child. Elijah finally turned to May. "You hurt?" he asked. She shook her head even though the answer was yes in every way that mattered. "You got someplace safe to go?" No. Nowhere had ever been safe. Her voice cracked. "Why did you help me?" He adjusted his hat, eyes softer now but still steady. "Didn't want the boy seeing a grown man stand by and watch someone get dragged." May swallowed. Blinking tears she refused to let fall. Elijah extended his hand, not grabbing, not insisting, just offering. "You can ride with me," he said, "just till we get you patched up." She hesitated, not because she feared him, but because the kindness felt foreign, almost painful. But staying meant Jeb, and Jeb meant the end. So slowly, trembling, May placed her hand in Elijah's, warm, steady, not claiming her, not owning her, just holding her weight long enough for her to climb onto the horse. For the first time in a long time, hope, thin, fragile, unbelievable, stirred in her chest. Elijah clicked his tongue, guiding the horse toward Coal Creek Ranch, and May, pressed against the saddle horn, realized she wasn't being taken. She was being saved. But that was a feeling she'd forgotten how to trust. Elijah Cole didn't speak much on the ride back. He never did. Words were something he used sparingly, the way other men handled bullets, only when necessary. The rhythm of the horse beneath them steadied May's trembling, though every bump reminded her how bruised and hollow her body felt. Isaiah rode behind on Jeb's stolen horse, humming some little tune like escorting a trussed-up outlaw was just another chore between feeding chickens and fixing fences. Jeb cursed the whole way, stumbling over every rock as the rope tightened around his wrists. Isaiah just tipped his hat and said, "Careful there, mister," each time Jeb nearly face-planted. May would have laughed if her ribs didn't hurt so much. Elijah guided his black horse off the main road, down a narrower path lined with weather-beaten fence posts. May recognized it as ranch land, not big, not fancy, but cared for. A quiet place where things grew because someone took the time to tend them. She couldn't remember the last time she'd seen anything cared for. When they reached the yard, Elijah stopped and helped her down. He held out both hands, steadying her waist lightly, respectfully, as if touching her wasn't his right, but a risk he weighed carefully. May hadn't known a man could touch that way. Her feet hit the ground, and pain shot up her legs. She gasped, knees almost buckling. Elijah's hand closed gently around her elbow, keeping her upright. "Easy. Ain't no rush here." No rush. The words felt like fiction. Rosa Delgado hurried out of the small ranch house, wiping her hands on her apron. Dark hair braided back tight, eyes sharp but kind. "Dios mío," she murmured, rushing to May. "Girl, what hell did you crawl out of?" May tried to shrink away. Shame was a habit hard to break. Elijah stepped in, voice low but firm. "Rosa, this is May. She needs a place to rest a spell." Rosa took in May's torn skirt, the bruises blooming across her arms, the raw fear on her face. That alone was answer enough. She nodded. "Come on, honey. Let's get you inside." May wanted to protest. She didn't want to be trouble, but her legs didn't ask her opinion. Rosa led her into the kitchen, sat her down, and fetched a basin of warm water. As Rosa washed the dirt and blood from May's feet, May flinched. "I can do it," she whispered, embarrassed. "I know you can," Rosa said softly. "But you don't have to." That broke her a little inside. Not enough to spill tears, but enough to loosen something she'd been forced to keep chained. Elijah entered quietly, removing his hat, giving May space while still hovering in that protector's radius, close enough to catch her if she slipped, far enough not to crowd. Isaiah peeked over his shoulder. Uncle Eli tied that man up real good, he announced proudly. Rosa rolled her eyes. The sheriff will be here any minute to collect his fool hide. Put water on for coffee. Isaiah scampered off. May lifted her gaze to Elijah. I'm sorry. This is going to cause you trouble. Elijah shook his head. Trouble finds me whether I ask for it or not. This ain't on you. But Jeb's been looking for a fight since the day he was tall enough to reach a bottle. Elijah's tone darkened. And he doesn't care who he hurts on the way. May swallowed. The memory of Jeb's fist, his laugh, his breath thick with whiskey, too close, too familiar. Elijah noticed the panic flicker across her face. He crouched, meeting her eyes level. He won't touch you again. Not while you're on my land. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. And promises were foreign to May. Real ones anyway. As Rosa bandaged her blisters, May murmured, "Thank you. I don't know why you did it." Elijah leaned back against the counter, folding his arms. Isaiah's watching me every day. I don't want him learning a man should turn away from someone being hurt. May blinked. You saved me. For him? He shrugged. Seemed reason enough. A strange warmth spread through her chest. Not the romantic kind, nothing so bold, but a tender ache. A reminder that goodness, once in a blue moon, still existed. A loud knock shook the front door. Sheriff Hank Duffy entered without waiting for an invitation. Big-bellied, red-faced, eyes narrowed beneath a sweat-stained hat. He scratched his mustache as he scanned the room. "Evening, Elijah," he grunted. "Rosa, boy." Then his eyes landed on May. "So this the girl caused all the fuss?" May tensed. Jeb wasn't here, yet somehow the sheriff carried the same judgment in his stare. Elijah stepped in front of May, not aggressively, but unmistakably protective. "Jeb was drunk, Hank. He was dragging her through the dirt." "Jeb says otherwise," Duffy replied, tapping his notebook. May felt panic crawl up her throat. Elijah's voice lowered. "Hank, you know that boy lies better than he rides, and he don't ride worth a damn." Isaiah snickered. Rosa shot him a look. Duffy exhaled, scratching his neck. "Look, Elijah, Tanner boys bring headaches, and Silas Tanner brings worse." "I'm aware," Elijah said coolly. Duffy glanced again at May. "You stirrin' trouble in Dry Creek, miss?" May forced herself to sit straighter, though her heart pounded. "No, sir." "She's stayin' here," Elijah added, "just till she's back on her feet." The sheriff grumbled but finally nodded. "Fine. But if Silas comes knockin', I ain't standin' between you." "You never do," Elijah replied. Duffy left, letting the door slam. Rosa snorted. "Coward." Isaiah whispered, "Told you Uncle Eli tied Jeb up good." May let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Fear lingered, but for the first time in years, it had company, something gentler, something like safety. Elijah tipped his hat toward her. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we figure out where you're headed next." May nodded, though deep inside she already knew something unsettling, something hopeful. For the first time, she didn't want to go anywhere at all. May Harper woke before the sun, startled from a dream that felt too close to memory, shouting, boots on floorboards, hands grabbing at her dress. She sat upright on the long couch in Elijah's front room, gasping until the shadows settled into familiar shapes. The wood-burning stove, the old rocking chair, Elijah's hat hanging on the wall. For a moment she listened, half expecting Jeb's voice, half expecting nothing at all. Instead, she heard the clatter of pans, the faint hum of someone working. Isaiah peeked around the corner. "You awake, Miss May? Uncle Eli says breakfast's ready. Rosa brought biscuits." May rubbed her eyes. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to sleep so late." "You ain't late," Isaiah said proudly. "Uncle Eli says folks rest when they need rest. Ranch'll still be here after." May couldn't remember anyone talking like that, like she wasn't in the way. She followed Isaiah into the kitchen, limping slightly from the bandaged blisters. Rosa stood at the table, kneading dough, humming a soft tune in Spanish. Elijah sat near the stove, repairing a bridle strap, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms dusted with sawdust and quiet strength. He looked up. "Mornin', May." Her heart fluttered unexpectedly. "Morning." Rosa nudged a steaming bowl toward her. "Eat while it's hot. You look like a stiff wind would knock you down." May blushed, taking the spoon. The soup was simple: chicken, beans, onion, but it tasted like something she hadn't known in years: care. She swallowed too fast, burning her tongue, and blinked at the sudden sting in her eyes. Elijah noticed, but didn't comment. He just returned to fixing the bridle, the rhythm calm, steadying. After a few moments, May cleared her throat. "You really don't have to feed me. I can work. I'm not helpless." Elijah glanced at her. "Never said you were. But I am a stranger, and strangers usually cost people." The last words slipped out colder than she intended. Elijah set down the strap. "Isaiah sees things, learns fast. I ain't raising him to think we turn our backs on folks who need help, even when it's messy." May stared at him, uncertain how to hold so gentle a truth. "I'm not used to this." Rosa chuckled softly. "Most of us ain't, honey." Isaiah sat beside May. "Want to see my book? Pastor Lewis taught me letters." He opened a worn primer, flipping pages with the excitement of a boy who hadn't had much to be excited about lately. May smiled, a real one. "You're good at reading." He grinned. "I practice. Uncle Eli says a man ought to know words as well as horses." Elijah hid a small smile behind his coffee mug. May felt warmth spread through her chest. Thin, fragile, but real. A feeling she didn't trust yet. A feeling she didn't want to lose. When breakfast was finished, she stepped outside, careful with her sore feet. The ranch yard was quiet, only the rustle of early wind and the shifting of horses in the corral. She moved slowly, drawn by an instinct she didn't understand. Perhaps the need to see the place that had taken her in. Her gaze drifted toward an old shed, half collapsed, its doors hanging crooked. Inside, she found a row of tools and an iron branding rod hanging on a nail. The curved metal bore a strange mark, two lines forking like rivers, and along the surface a patch of blackened scorch, darker than the rest. She traced the air near it with her fingers. Something about it felt important, too important. But before she could think on it longer, Elijah's shadow filled the doorway. "I wouldn't touch that," he said quietly. May turned, startled. "What is it?" Elijah hesitated. A flicker of something old, pain, passed through his eyes. "Just a piece of metal from another life. Ain't worth keepin', but I haven't thrown it out yet." May nodded slowly. She recognized that tone. She'd used it herself for years, whenever someone asked about her past. Some things weren't ready to come out into the light. Elijah stepped aside, letting her exit first. "Ranch chores wait for nobody. I'm taking you into town later today. Talk to Pastor Lewis. He might find you a place to stay proper." May's stomach tightened. "He wants me gone." Of course he did. That had always been the way. Men helped until the helping became inconvenient. She lowered her gaze. "I understand." Elijah frowned, catching the tremble in her voice. "May, I didn't mean you're not welcome. Just thought you might want choices." Choices. She hadn't had those in a long time. Her throat tightened. "I don't know what I want." Isaiah came running up before Elijah could answer. "Uncle Eli, horse trough's leaking again." Elijah sighed, nodding. "Show me." As they walked off, May lingered near the porch, arms wrapped around herself. She watched Elijah adjust his hat, lift the trough, talk Isaiah through patching it. Not impatient, not angry, just steady. And in that steadiness, something inside her unclenched. Just a little. Rosa joined her on the porch, wiping her hands. "That man carries more ghosts than he admits." May looked down. "I figured." "But he's good," Rosa added softly. "Good in the way that doesn't shout or brag. Good in the way that holds a house quiet." May swallowed. "I don't know how to be around good men." Rosa laughed, warm and amused. "Most good men don't know how to be around themselves either." May surprised herself by smiling. She watched Elijah and Isaiah working together, a pair bound not by blood alone but by choice. She'd never seen a family choose each other before. She didn't know if she belonged here, but for the first time in years, she wanted to try. May had never been inside a church without feeling like she needed to apologize just for breathing. So when Elijah told her they were going into Dry Creek to speak with Pastor Lewis, her stomach tied itself in knots. Rosa softened it with a squeeze of May's shoulders. "Pastor Lewis is a good soul. The town ain't always kind, but he tries to be." It helped, a little. Elijah saddled the horses, moving with that quiet precision May was beginning to recognize as his way of speaking without words. When he helped her mount, his hand lingered just long enough to steady her, not enough to lay claim. She didn't understand why that gentleness made her chest ache. The ride into town was shorter than she wanted. With every hoofbeat, May worried about faces turning, whispers rising, Jeb showing up with that smug smile that made her skin crawl. Elijah must have sensed her tension. He rode a little closer, body a quiet wall between her and whatever waited ahead. But she wasn't prepared for what she saw. Jeb Tanner stood on the church steps, sober now, bruised but smirking, with Sheriff Duffy beside him. A few townsfolk lingered near the hitching posts, murmuring when May arrived. Elijah dismounted first. "Stay behind me," he murmured. May obeyed, palms sweating. Jeb spat into the dirt. "Well, well, thought you'd sneak that little thief into town and nobody'd notice?" May stiffened. "I stole nothing." "Sure you didn't," Jeb sneered. "You stole my horse time, stole my money, stole—" Elijah stepped between them. "She doesn't belong to you." Jeb's smirk widened. "Funny thing, Eli. That ain't what you said in the war." A hush fell. Elijah's shoulders tightened. Not fear. Something older, heavier. May blinked. "What does he mean?" Jeb puffed his chest like he'd been saving this moment. "Tell her. Tell everyone how I dragged your sorry hide out of a pile of bodies at Twin Rivers. Saved your damn life. And now you tie me up like some thief?" Sheriff Duffy crossed his arms. "Town ought to hear this." Elijah's jaw clenched so tight May heard it. "That's not how it happened." "Course it is," Jeb said loudly, grinning at the growing crowd. "Sides, this girl? She's saloon trash. Ran from Santa Rosa with somebody's wallet, I bet. You're hiding her? Maybe she's paying you back under the table." People murmured. Women looked May up and down with narrowed eyes. Someone muttered, "Knew she looked like trouble." Another whispered, "Coloreds and strays. Dry Creek don't need neither." May's breath shattered. Shame pulsed hot in her veins. Though she'd done nothing wrong. She felt 14 again, standing in a saloon kitchen, men laughing at her tears. Elijah finally spoke, voice low but firm. "Jeb, you're drunk on your own lies." "Watch who you're calling a liar," Jeb snapped. "My daddy owns half the valley." "And that's supposed to make you a man?" Elijah shot back. Duffy stepped forward. "Enough. Jeb says the girl's a runaway thief. Elijah's harboring her. That's a problem." Elijah turned to May. His eyes weren't demanding, just asking. "Do you want to speak? Do you need me to?" No man had ever given her that choice. Her voice trembled. "I was never his. He didn't save me. He bought a lie about me and thought it made me his property." The murmur grew louder. Doubt. Disbelief. Judgment. Jeb snorted. "She's lying. Look at her." He gestured at her patched dress, bruises, dirt. "She's exactly what she looks like." May flinched like he'd hit her. Elijah's breath left him in a slow, dangerous exhale. "You're done talking." Jeb stepped closer, eyes mean. "Funny, Eli. You forget who kept you alive back then." Elijah didn't move. "I didn't forget. I remember exactly what happened at Twin Rivers." Something flickered across Jeb's face. Fear? No, annoyance. like a man swatting a buzzing fly. "Don't start preachin'." Elijah's hand twitched once, the slightest tremor, but he held himself still. May didn't know what the name Twin Rivers meant, but the way Elijah's voice softened around it felt like a scar aching under old weather. Pastor Lewis finally emerged from the church. "Brothers, please," but the crowd already felt like a noose tightening. Sheriff Duffy gave Elijah a warning look. "Elijah, best let her come with me for a questionin'. Let the law sort it." "No," May whispered, panic rising. "Please, I didn't." Elijah stepped beside her, solid as a wall of oak. "She's stayin' with me for now." "That ain't your call," Duffy barked. "It is," Elijah replied calmly, "if your law only listens to one side." A long moment stretched. Heat, suspicion, fear, like the whole town balanced on a rusted wire. Finally, Pastor Lewis cleared his throat. May stay at Coal Creek for a few days while I inquire with the ladies in town. No charges, no arrests. That is my word." Duffy hesitated, then backed down with a grunt. "Fine. But if Tanner's boys come complainin', don't say I didn't warn you." Jeb glared at May like carving her with his eyes. "You ain't worth the trouble, girl. But my father'll settle this." Elijah didn't look away. "Let him come." It was the calmest threat May had ever heard. As they rode out of town, May kept her head down, trembling. Not because she feared Jeb, she'd always feared men like him, but because she'd felt Elijah standing beside her like a shield he never asked her to earn. He didn't speak until they'd left the last building behind. "May," he said quietly, "you don't owe that town a single truth." Her voice cracked. "They looked at me like I was filth." "People see what they want to see." His gaze softened. "But you ain't what they said." No man had ever told her that. No man had ever meant it. And behind Elijah's gentleness, she caught it. A storm he kept locked behind his ribs. Something about Twin Rivers. Something about Jeb's rescue. Something he carried like a stone strapped to his heart. She didn't know what it was yet, but she knew this. Whatever it was, it hurt him. And for the first time, she wanted to understand a man instead of running from one. Coal Creek Ranch looked quieter than May remembered, like it was holding its breath after the scene in town. Elijah guided the horses into the yard, dismounted, then helped her down as gently as he had that first day. His touch was careful, steady, but May felt a trembling in herself she couldn't blame on sore feet. Rosa appeared on the porch with a dish rag over her shoulder. "Well, did the pastor talk some sense into that sheriff?" Elijah shook his head. "Duffy's trying to please Tanner and stay lazy at the same time. Pastor bought us a little time, that's all." May felt the weight of those words settle like stones inside her chest. A little time. Not safety. Not freedom. Just borrowed breaths. Rosa sighed, muttered something sharp in Spanish, and waved May inside. "Come on, sweetheart. I saved you a biscuit." May didn't feel hungry, but the moment she stepped into the warm kitchen, the smell of bread and herbs eased the shaking in her fingers. It was strange. Her body still braced for danger, But this house pushed back the darkness inch by inch. Isaiah rushed in, clutching a book. "Miss May, look! I finished a whole chapter by myself." May found herself smiling. "Isaiah, that's wonderful." Elijah watched them from the doorway, arms folded, expression unreadable but softer than she'd ever seen on a man's face. Like he was surprised this little moment existed, surprised and grateful. Rosa elbowed May lightly. "You want to be useful? Help me peel these potatoes." May blinked. "You really want my help?" Rosa snorted. "Honey, I want anyone's help. I'm too old to be running this kitchen alone." May rolled up her sleeves. As she worked, her movements clumsy at first, then smoother. She felt something loosen in her chest, something she hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Belonging. Like she wasn't a burden, but a pair of hands that made life easier for someone. When dinner came around, the four of them gathered at the table. Not much. Beans, potatoes, warm bread. But the way they passed dishes, the way Isaiah told stories between mouthfuls, the way Rosa teased Elijah about forgetting to oil the barn door. It felt like watching a life she'd never known existed. At one point, Elijah glanced up at May, catching her mid-smile. She froze, embarrassed, but he only nodded quietly, as if to say, "You're allowed to enjoy this." Halfway through dinner, Isaiah leaned closer to May. "You gonna stay long?" May hesitated. Her throat tightened. I don't know." Isaiah frowned. "You can. I don't mind. You're nice." Elijah nearly choked on his water. "Isaiah." "What?" Isaiah protested. "She is." May laughed before she could stop herself. A soft sound, foreign but welcome. Rosa beamed. After dinner, Elijah stepped outside to fix the section of fence Jeb had damaged weeks ago. The sun dipped low, smearing the sky with pink and gold. May wandered out with a lantern. "You don't have to help," Elijah said without looking up. May stood beside him anyway. "I know." He tightened a board, the muscles in his arms flexing under the fading light. "Thought maybe you'd want to rest. Been a long day." May held the lantern steady. "I rest too much. My mind starts running. I'd rather be useful." Elijah paused mid-motion. Something in his eyes shifted. Recognition, maybe. Understanding. "All right then." For a while they worked in silence. Comfortable silence. Something she'd never known growing up in saloons and boarding houses, where silence always meant someone was watching, or waiting, or plotting. Here, silence meant peace. When they finished, the stars had risen like pinholes in a dark blanket. Elijah leaned on the fence, catching his breath. May stood beside him, unsure whether she was allowed to share this quiet, this view. "Elijah," she said softly, "I'm sorry about earlier, about the people in town, what they said about you, about me." He didn't turn. His voice stayed low. Ain't nothing you need to be sorry for. But they judged you because of me. They judged me long before you came along. His jaw tightened, but not in anger, in resignation. People see a colored man and decide who he is before he opens his mouth. Learn that young. May lowered her gaze. I know what it's like, to have people see the worst in you before you speak. He finally looked at her, eyes steady. Yeah, you do. A slow breath passed between them. Pain, yes, but shared pain, recognized pain. It connected them in a way May hadn't expected. From the barn, Rosa called, May, come help me with the laundry. May almost groaned. Laundry? Elijah snorted, an honest, genuine laugh that startled her. Welcome to ranch life. May smiled back, warm and unfiltered. For a few hours, everything felt simple, safe, like the storm had passed. But storms don't pass that easily. While May and Rosa hung clothes on the line behind the house, something rustled near the cattle pens. May looked up, frowning. What was that? She whispered. Rosa shrugged. Probably a raccoon. Those little thieves love sneaking around. But May's heart thudded, uneasy. She stepped a little closer to the fence, just enough to see a dark figure moving async from the herd, a knife glinting briefly in the moonlight. The figure vanished into the night. May's breath caught. Inside the pen, brand marks glowed faintly on several cows. Fresh. Wrong. None of those cattle belonged to Elijah. A chill swept through her. Someone had moved Tanner cattle into Coal Creek Ranch. Quietly. Carefully. A trap. May swallowed hard, forcing the air back into her lungs. Tomorrow, the warmth of this house would be shattered. Tomorrow, someone would come to claim theft. And she, who had just begun to feel safe, felt the first crack in that fragile peace. The storm wasn't gone. It was waiting. May woke before the rooster, heart already racing, as if her body sensed something her mind hadn't caught up to yet. The memory of the shadow near the cattle pen flashed through her like a blade. Quick, cold, unforgiving. She slipped outside, breath turning white in the dawn chill. The ranch looked peaceful, a soft fog hugging the pasture, the horses snorting quietly, Isaiah still snoring somewhere inside. But peace could lie. Peace could be the thin crust hiding fire beneath. She stepped closer to the cattle pen, and there they were. 4 steers with the Tanner brand scorched across their hide. Her pulse galloped. They planted them. It wasn't an accident. It was a setup. Footsteps crunched behind her. She spun. Elijah stood at the gate, hair tousled from sleep, shirt halfway buttoned. May? You all right? She opened her mouth to warn him. The world exploded in noise. Hooves thundered. Men yelled. A fist pounded on the front gate hard enough to rattle the hinges. Sheriff Duffy's voice bellowed, Elijah Cole, open up! May felt her stomach drop. Elijah didn't curse or panic. He simply exhaled a long, tired breath. Stay behind me. By the time they reached the yard, 3 deputies were already pushing through the gate. Jeb Tanner swaggered in behind them, every bruise on his face displayed like a trophy. "Well, look at here," Jeb said loudly. "Told you he was a rustler, Sheriff." Duffy gestured to the cattle pen. "We found Tanner cattle on Cole property this morning. Fresh Brandon. Clear as daylight." Elijah stepped forward. "Somebody planted them. Those animals weren't here last night." Jeb laughed. Sure. And ghosts rode 'em in." May felt fire climb her throat. "I saw someone, last night, near the pens." Duffy turned to her with bored irritation. "And who are you again? The runaway saloon girl? The one with the troubled memory?" Jeb smirked. "She'll say anything to protect her new man." Elijah stiffened, just for a second, not at the insult, but at the way May shrank under their stares. Duffy lifted a pair of iron cuffs. "Elijah Cole, you're under arrest for cattle theft. You resist, I'll add assault on an officer." Isaiah burst out of the house, barefoot and terrified. "Uncle Eli, what's happening?" Elijah's jaw tightened. He looked at the boy, his boy in every way that mattered, and May saw a storm of fear and resolve cross his face. He could fight. He was strong, fast, skilled, but if he fought, Isaiah would be left alone, and the town would see nothing but what they already wanted to see: a dangerous Negro man attacking the law. Elijah raised his hands. "I'll go peaceably." Isaiah's voice cracked. "No, you didn't do anything." Elijah knelt, cupping the boy's face. "Listen to me. You keep the ranch safe till I get back. Understand?" Isaiah nodded with tears sliding down his cheeks. May's chest burned. How many times had she watched good men punished while cowards cheered? How many times had she stayed silent to survive? Jeb swaggered toward her. "Now for the girl. Sheriff, she was hanging round them cattle, too. Probably helped him move 'em." May felt cold crawl up her spine. Duffy smirked. "Miss Harper, I got a few questions for you. You can answer straight." He lowered his voice, leaning close. "Or you can lie for Elijah and take the fall with him." She swallowed hard. "I didn't do anything." "That ain't what Jeb says." Duffy tipped his hat. "And his word weighs more'n yours." Jeb stepped closer, breath sour with last night's whiskey. "Sheriff here's making you an offer, sweetheart. Tell him Elijah forced you to help steal the cattle, and you get a nice escort out of town. Maybe Santa Fe. Fresh start." May froze. There it was. The old trap. The familiar bargain. A man's freedom, traded for her survival. Her hands shook, not from fear of the sheriff, not from Jeb's smirk, from the part of herself that knew too well how easy it would be to nod, whisper the lie, disappear. Duffy's voice dripped slow and false kind. "Girl like you don't want to end up in a cell. You know how men talk in there, how they assume things." Jeb's smile stretched. "Just say Elijah made you do it. Real simple." May looked at Elijah, cuffed, guarded by 2 deputies. His eyes were calm, but there was a flicker underneath. a plea he would never voice. Don't lie to save me. Don't damn yourself. But beneath that, something deeper. Don't let them make you small again. May felt the air leave her lungs. She had survived by being silent, compliant, invisible. But that survival had cost her everything. Her dignity, her hope, her belief in the possibility of goodness. Elijah had given her back a sliver of that hope. Now they wanted her to use it as a weapon against him. Her voice trembled. Sheriff, I won't lie. Jeb scoffed. Course you will. Girls like you always do. No. She lifted her chin, barely. But enough. I'm not who I used to be. Duffy's face hardened. Then you're comin' with us. May faltered. She wasn't brave enough for this. She wasn't strong enough. A warm voice cut through her spiraling panic. May, Elijah said quietly, do what's right. For you. For you. Not for him, not for the ranch. For her. Something inside her cracked, and through that crack, light bled in. She straightened her shoulders. I'm not signing anything, she said. Jeb spat at her feet. Then you're both screwed. Duffy snapped, take him. The deputies dragged Elijah toward the wagon. Isaiah clawed at them until Rosa pulled him back, sobbing. May watched the man who saved her get shoved into a cell on wheels because she refused to trade her soul for safety again. The door slammed. Metal against metal. Final. As the wagon rolled away, dust swallowing the wheels, May whispered to herself, I won't run. Not this time. But her voice shook. She knew the cost of staying was only beginning. The Dry Creek jail smelled like rust, dust, and tired regret. Elijah Cole sat on the narrow cot, wrists red where the cuffs had rubbed. He'd been in cells before. Army stockades, border tents, holding pens after raids. But this one felt heavier. Not because of the iron bars, because of the boy crying outside them. Isaiah's voice drifted in from the sheriff's office, choked, small, breaking. He didn't do nothing, Pastor. He didn't. Elijah closed his eyes. The sound tore at him. He would have taken a beating, a bullet, a night in the cold, anything but Isaiah learning how the world treated men who looked like Elijah. Pastor Lewis murmured soft words, trying to soothe the boy. But grief doesn't listen to comfort. Sheriff Duffy walked by the cells, jangling keys like coins. I warned you, Cole. Tanner boys ain't folks you poke at. Elijah said nothing. Duffy leaned on the bars. Look, I ain't looking to ruin your life, but Silas Tanner, he'll push this all the way to court unless something tilts the scales. You mean a lie, Elijah said quietly. Duffy shrugged. Truth's flexible, Elijah. Ask any politician. Elijah looked up, eyes steady. Not mine. Duffy scoffed and walked away, muttering about stubborn, colored pride. When the sheriff's boots vanished, Pastor Lewis stepped into view, face lined with worry. He opened the barred door to the hallway. Isaiah's with Rosa now. She took him home. Elijah exhaled slowly. Relief cut through him like a warm knife. "Thank you." The pastor studied him carefully. "You look like a man carrying more weight than these bars." Elijah hesitated. Words sat in his chest like stones, heavy, burning, dangerous. But Pastor Lewis waited, quiet, patient, like a man who had seen many souls trapped in many prisons. Elijah rubbed his thumb over the scar on his palm, the one shaped like a twisted river. "Twin rivers," he said softly. The pastor stiffened. Elijah continued, voice hoarse. "Jeb says he saved me, that he dragged me out. That's the story he tells." Pastor Lewis stepped closer. "And the truth?" Elijah let the memory swallow him. Fire, screams, smoke thick enough to choke angels. Jacob Reed shouting for the children to run. Men in burlap masks riding in circles, guns flashing like lightning. Elijah, just a boy, hiding behind a water trough until hands dragged him out. Not Jacob's hands, not safety. Hands that hurt. Hands that branded. Elijah swallowed hard. "I was 14. Jacob Reed raised me like kin. He taught me to read, to ride, to walk with my head high." That night, Silas Tanner and his men came. They claimed the land didn't belong to freedmen, said we were squattin' above our station. They shot Jacob, burned the barn, branded us like animals so no one'd forget who owned the valley. Pastor Lewis's voice trembled. "I remember the fires. I came after the smoke cleared. Found bodies. Found you crawling through the ash." Elijah looked away. "Jeb didn't save me. He stood there watching his father doing the branding. Later, when they realized I was still breathing, Silas offered me a choice. Join the army under his recommendation, or stay and watch Isaiah's mama, the girl I grew up with, get punished for hiding me." Pastor Lewis whispered, "So you left." "I left," Elijah said, voice hollow. "Left her. Left Jacob. Left Twin Rivers to die in silence. That's the part I never told Isaiah. Or anyone." The pastor gripped the bars. "You were a child, Elijah." "I was a coward," Elijah said softly. "And that cowardice has followed me every mile." Silence stretched between them, thick, heavy with unspoken grief. Finally, Pastor Lewis spoke, voice low but firm. "Jacob Reed wouldn't want you drowning in guilt your whole life. Surviving ain't a sin. But silence can become one." Elijah lifted his gaze. Pain flickered, old and aching. Pastor Lewis continued, "I carry a scar, too." He rolled up his sleeve. A twisted burn mark, same shape, same river brand, lay across his forearm. "I escaped Twin Rivers with a wagon of children. Been hiding this scar since the night we fled. But scars don't stay hidden forever." Elijah stared. He'd always thought he was the only one left. Lewis laid a hand on the bars. "Maybe it's time the truth stood out in daylight." Not just for you, for all of us. Elijah let out a trembling breath. If I speak, Silas Tanner'll come down on every colored family from here to Santa Fe. And if you stay quiet, Lewis replied gently, Silas keeps winning. A long, dangerous truth settled into Elijah's bones. He was tired. Tired of running from ghosts. Tired of bending to threats. Tired of letting men like Silas Tanner bury the past. He leaned back against the wall. May saw something last night. She told me before they grabbed me. Lewis nodded. That girl's scared, but she's got a spine. Reminds me of the women from Twin Rivers. Jeb wants her to lie, Elijah murmured. Sheriff, too. Will she? Elijah shook his head slowly. No, not anymore. The pastor smiled sadly. Then maybe the Lord's sending you help in a way you didn't expect. Elijah exhaled. His heart hurt. But something had shifted, a decision taking shape. He wasn't sure what tomorrow held, accusation, trial, danger, but he knew one thing. He was done being silent, and when the truth came out, it would not whisper. It would roar. May sat on the small bed in Rosa Delgado's spare room, hands trembling on her lap. The walls felt too close, the air too still, like the entire house was holding its breath around her. Rosa had insisted she stay here for now. Safer than alone at the ranch with the sheriff prowling around, she said. But safety was a fragile word. May didn't know if she'd ever feel it again. Rosa entered with a steaming mug. Chamomile. Drink it. You look like you're fixin' to jump out of your own skin. May forced a small smile and sipped. Warmth spread through her chest, but it couldn't quiet the storm inside her. Elijah shouldn't be in that cell, May whispered. Rosa sighed. I know. May's eyes burned. I should have said something more. Fought harder. Done anything. Honey, Rosa said softly, sitting beside her. You stood your ground. That's more'n half the folks in this town ever done. May looked down at her hands. They still shook. Doesn't feel like enough. There was a gentle knock. Rosa rose, murmured, I'll check. She disappeared down the hall. Moments later, she returned, holding May's small cloth pouch, the one Jeb had thrown into the dirt, and she'd rescued like her life depended on it. Found this when I was cleanin', Rosa said, setting it on the bed. Figured it meant something. May's breath caught. She opened the pouch with trembling fingers. The worn Bible. A few coins. And behind them, papers she had never truly read. Deeds. Contracts. Old survey maps. Words and signatures she didn't understand back when she'd first found them in a trunk after her mother died. But now the names leapt off the page. Jacob Reed, Twin Rivers, Parcel C, transfer of rights pending, witnessed by Silas Tanner. May stared so hard she forgot to breathe. Rosa, these papers, they're about that place, Twin Rivers. Rosa frowned. You sure? May nodded, throat tight. She dug deeper, finding a note scrawled in faint ink. Jacob, don't let them push you off your own land. The truth will outlive them. Her vision blurred. Her mind raced. Elijah's nightmare murmurs. The branding iron in the old shed. Jeb bragging at the saloon. This valley's built on bones. Pieces slammed together. Twin Rivers wasn't just Elijah's past. It was his land. Land that Silas Tanner had stolen. I have to go back to the ranch, May said suddenly. Rosa's eyes widened. Honey, no, Duffy's watching that place like a dog on a bone. I don't care. May stood, knees weak but heart steadying. I know what they did. I can prove it. You can prove Silas Tanner's a thief? Rosa asked. This town won't believe a word from you. May swallowed hard. Maybe they won't believe me, but they might believe proof. Rosa hesitated. May, where you aim to start? Sheriff's got half the ranch locked up. May clenched her jaw. The branding iron, the papers. I need to put them together. If I don't, Elijah will hang for something he didn't do. And Isaiah, he'll lose the only family he's got. Rosa stared at her long and hard. You realize going back could get you hurt. May's voice dropped to a whisper. Everything hurts when you live scared. Rosa softened. Let me help. No, May said quietly. This is something I gotta do alone. If I keep running, I'll never stop. Rosa cupped May's cheek. Then take my horse, and take this. She slipped a small knife into May's hand. Not for fightin', for feelin' safer. May nodded, wiping her eyes. Rosa's kindness pressed against her chest until she could barely breathe. As May saddled the horse behind the house, Sheriff Duffy's boots thudded up the front steps. May's pulse spiked. Rosa stepped out the door to block him. Looking for the girl, Duffy barked. She's got to sign a statement. No statements today, Rosa snapped. Come back never. May slipped away through the back gate, mounting quickly. Her body shook, but her decision was steady as steel. Once she cleared the last alley, she urged the horse forward. The wind hit her face, cold and thrilling. She rode fast, faster than she had ever dared, her hair whipping behind her like a banner of defiance. Every hoofbeat echoed with a truth she'd buried for years. She was done letting men decide who she was. By the time Coal Creek Ranch appeared over the ridge, dusk had settled deep, shadows stretching long across the earth. The ranch house stood quiet, too quiet, the windows dim. May dismounted, tying the horse loosely. Her heartbeat thudded in her ears as she crept toward the old shed. Inside, the branding iron hung where she remembered, its Twin Rivers symbol blackened with age. She wrapped her hand in a cloth and lifted it carefully. It felt heavy, colder than she expected, like holding a ghost. This is the proof, she whispered. This and the papers. A sudden creak behind her made her jump. She spun, knife in hand, but no one was there, just the wind. Her fear pushed her toward the house, But before she could step out into the yard, hooves thundered from the ridge. May's stomach flip-flopped. Voices. Laughter. Jeb. He wasn't alone. He brought 3 riders. Their lanterns cast long fingers of light across the yard as they rode in like they owned the place. May ducked inside the shed, heart slamming. She peered through a crack in the boards. Jeb slid off his horse, swaggering. "Burn it all," he ordered. "If Duffy wants a reason to take the ranch, we'll give him one." May's blood ran ice cold. They weren't done framing Elijah. They wanted to destroy everything he had left. She clutched the branding iron to her chest. Fear clawed at her throat, whispering, "Run, run, run." But she didn't. For the first time in her life, she stayed. For Elijah. For Isaiah. For every part of her that refused to be a scared girl anymore. May Harper straightened her spine. She was done being prey. May pressed herself against the shed wall, heart hammering, but steadier than she'd ever known it. Jeb Tanner's voice cut through the dark as he and 3 riders moved through the ranch yard like wolves. "Burn the barn," Jeb ordered. "Then the house. Sheriff will call it an accident." May's stomach twisted. Isaiah might return any moment. And Elijah's home, his memories, his life, stood one spark away from ruin. She tightened her grip on the cloth-wrapped branding iron. Fear screamed run, but something fiercer rose inside her, anger, bright and defiant. She stepped into the lantern light. "Put it down." Jeb turned, smirking. "Well, look who found a backbone." May lifted the iron. Her voice shook, but her feet didn't move. "You leave this ranch, right now." Jeb laughed. "Or what? You'll whimper at me?" "No," she said quietly. "I'll stand." For a heartbeat, even the riders hesitated, because May didn't look like prey anymore. Before Jeb could respond, a sharp clang exploded across the night. Isaiah, small, terrified, determined, rang the ranch's dinner bell with everything he had. The sound echoed through the valley like a battle cry. Lanterns flickered on in nearby cabins. Doors opened. Voices rose. "What's going on? Is that the coal boy?" Within moments, neighbors, Mexican ranchers, freedmen, widowers, hurried in with lanterns and old rifles, forming a loose circle around Jeb's men. Not attacking, just refusing to look away this time. Rosa sprinted barefoot toward Isaiah, wrapping him protectively. "Touch this boy, and you'll answer to me," she snapped. Jeb's jaw clenched. "Everybody needs to back off. My daddy—" "Your daddy don't own us," one rancher said sharply. Another added, "We're tired of Tanners running the valley." May's knees shook, but she stayed upright. For the first time, she wasn't fighting alone. Hoofbeats approached from the ridge. Silas Tanner rode in, cold-eyed and silent. He scanned the smoldering barn door. The neighbors gathered, the branding iron in May's grip. "Stand down, Jeb," Silas said. "What? Now!" Reluctantly, Jeb mounted. But Silas paused, fixing his icy gaze on May. "You've made a mistake, girl." May's voice was barely above a whisper, but steady. "So have you." His stare sharpened, Then he turned and rode off into the dark. The moment they vanished, May collapsed to her knees, breath trembling. Isaiah and Rosa rushed to her, along with a few neighbors. "You were brave, Nina," someone said. May shook her head. "I was scared." "But you stayed," Rosa replied. "That's what matters." May held the branding iron again, feeling its weight, its truth. Tonight, she'd face the past she'd been running from. Tonight, she'd protected the first place that ever felt like hers. Tomorrow, Dry Creek would face the truth, and she'd be the one to carry it into the light. Morning came too bright, too quiet, like the town was holding its breath for a fight it already knew was coming. May rode into Dry Creek alone, dust biting her cheeks, the Twin Rivers branding iron tied to her saddle, and Jacob Reed's papers pressed tight against her ribs. Her hands shook, but not from fear. This time it was purpose. In the square, a crude hearing had been set up. Sheriff Duffy stood on the steps with a pompous air, like justice were something he could stamp with a rubber seal. Jeb Tanner looked smug despite his bruises, and Elijah Cole, hands chained, face calm, stood before them like a man ready to take whatever the world threw next. Duffy cleared his throat. "Elijah Cole, accused of cattle theft and—" May's voice sliced through the morning like a whip. "That's a lie!" Heads snapped toward her as she rode straight into the square, dust swirling around her horse's hooves. She dismounted, landing shakily but standing tall. Elijah's eyes widened, not in surprise but in something like fear for her. May lifted the branding iron high. "This," she said, voice ringing, "belongs to a ranch called Twin Rivers, a ranch that was burned, a ranch whose people were murdered." The crowd murmured. Jeb stiffened. May held out the papers. "And these are Jacob Reed's land deeds, his signature, his ownership. You Tanners didn't inherit that valley, you stole it." Jeb barked a laugh. "This girl's crazy." "Shut up," May snapped. It startled him enough to silence him. She turned to the crowd. "Jeb bragged about it, said this valley was built on bones. How many times have you heard him say it in the saloon? How many of you just pretended not to hear?" Silas Tanner approached then, slow, confident, his presence like a shadow falling over the whole square. "Miss Harper," he said coldly, "you're speaking on matters you don't understand." Elijah stepped forward, chains rattling. "She understands enough." And then, for the first time, Elijah raised his voice, letting the weight of his past spill out in clean, devastating words. He told them about Twin Rivers, about Jacob Reed, about the night of the fire, about men in masks, about the brand on his palm, about silence, about survival. Every word fell like a stone into still water, ripples spreading through the crowd. Gasps, murmurs, shock. Pastor Lewis stepped forward and lifted his sleeve, revealing the same burned brand. "I was there," he said quietly. "I carried children away while Tanner men hunted us." A hush fell so deep, it felt like the ground itself was listening. Silas Tanner's jaw clenched. "These are inventions of bitter men." "No, Pa." A new voice broke through the tension. Eli Tanner, Silas's younger son, stepped out from the crowd, face pale but determined. "They're not inventions. I saw you pay the riders. I saw the papers in your safe." His voice cracked. "You told me never to repeat it." Silas's face drained of color. May felt the world shift, slow, seismic, irreversible. Duffy faltered, suddenly sweating. Well, we..." Pastor Lewis pointed at Elijah. "Release him." The crowd murmured in agreement now, louder, firmer. Rosa shouted, "Open those chains!" Under the pressure of the rising voices, white, black, Mexican, all together, Duffy finally fumbled the keys and unlocked the shackles. Elijah stepped free. May exhaled shakily. Elijah looked at her, the weight of years softening in his eyes. He didn't thank her, not with words. He didn't need to, because this moment belonged to both of them, to truth, to courage, to every voice that refused to stay silent anymore. And the fight was far from over. For a long, breathless moment, Dry Creek stood frozen, caught between the old world Silas Tanner ruled and the new truth cracking it open. The crowd murmured, anger and disbelief swirling like dust devils. Elijah stood free of chains, but not yet free of danger, not while Silas still held the town in his palm. Silas stepped forward slowly, eyes locked on his younger son. "Eli," he said, voice low and deadly calm. "You don't know what you're saying." But Eli Tanner didn't back down. His hands shook, but he stood tall. "I do. I've known for years." He looked at the crowd, men he'd ridden with, women who'd watched him grow up, workers his father underpaid. "I saw what he did. I saw the papers. I heard him say Twin Rivers needed to be cleaned out. I was a kid, but I knew it was wrong. And I've been sick with it ever since." Silas's jaw hardened. "Enough." "No," Eli said louder, voice cracking but strong. "I'm done lying for you." Jeb lunged forward, furious. "You traitor!" But several townsmen stepped between them, blocking Jeb's path. Not because they liked Eli, but because, for the first time, someone from inside the Tanner family had dared to tell the truth, and that truth rang louder than Jeb's rage. Sheriff Duffy looked cornered, throat bobbing. The crowd wasn't on his side anymore. He wiped sweat from his brow. Well, with these accusations and testimonies, I'll have to detain Silas Tanner pending an investigation by a federal judge." Silas barked a humorless laugh. "You think you can put cuffs on me? You?" He stepped toward Duffy, and the sheriff visibly retreated. Elijah moved then, not aggressive, not threatening, just stepping between Silas and everyone else, tall and steady. His presence shifted the air. Not violence. Authority born from survival. "Silas," Elijah said, voice deep and calm. "This land you stand on was Jacob Reed's. You burned it. You branded us. But we're still standing, and you can't burn the truth twice." The square went silent. May stepped beside Elijah, her hand brushing his lightly, not holding, just anchoring herself to the moment. "People died," she said, voice soft but unwavering. People who mattered. And you buried their names under your fences and your lies. No more. Eli swallowed hard, meeting his father's eyes. It ends today, Pa. Silas stared at his son, betrayal, fury, disbelief twisting his face. But the crowd closed in, not with weapons, but with numbers, with tiredness, with awakening. Duffy finally found his spine, though it wobbled like wet clay. Silas Tanner, you are under arrest. Lay down your weapon. For the first time in May's life, she saw real fear flicker across Silas's eyes. He weighed his options, his legacy, his sons, his power. Then he dropped his gun. The thud echoed like a timber falling. The deputies stepped in, cuffing him, and this time Silas didn't. Fight! Jeb shouted and cursed until Eli grabbed his brother's collar and hissed, "Stop!" Jeb froze, because Eli had never spoken to him like that. As Silas was led away, Elijah turned to Eli. "Your truth saved lives today." Eli swallowed hard. "I ain't looking to be a hero." "Good," Elijah said softly. "Heroes die too young, but honest men, they get a chance to start over." Eli nodded, eyes wet. May exhaled shakily as the crowd began dispersing, talking, arguing, stunned but moving. The kind of movement a town makes when truth rearranges its bones. Elijah turned to her. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. She had walked into the square alone. He had walked out of it free. And now, for the first time, they stood side by side, not as victims of Dry Creek's cruelty, but as people reshaping its future. Dry Creek changed faster than anyone expected once Silas Tanner's cuffs clicked shut. A federal marshal arrived within days, digging through testimonies, burned maps, and the Twin Rivers branding Iron May had guarded like a heartbeat. For the first time in this valley, the law didn't bow to wealth. When the ruling came, it felt like sunrise breaking over a long night. Fan dat Twin Rivers duk tra lai chonyungui song sot. Pastor Lewis. Several freedmen families. And Elijah Cole. Elijah stared at the official document on the porch, thumb grazing the seal. "Didn't think justice could fit on a piece of paper," he murmured. May smiled beside him. "It ain't just paper, Elijah. It's truth finally speaking out loud." A month later, the ranch sign changed. Cole Harper Ranch, open to all honest hands. Isaiah hammered the last nail and whooped. Rosa clapped proudly. Eli Tanner, quiet, humbled, trying to rebuild himself, held the ladder steady. Elijah's eyes found May across the yard, and that look alone could have been a vow. Their actual wedding came a week later under the cottonwood tree. A small gathering, Rosa crying happily, Pastor Lewis giving a blessing, Isaiah tossing petals that kept blowing the wrong direction. Freedmen families stood beside Mexican neighbors. A Chinese cowboy brought a wooden carving as a gift. Eli lingered at the edge, unsure but welcome. May wore the soft blue dress Rosa stitched. Elijah wore the old vest from the day he saved her on the road. When they joined hands, May trembled, not with fear, but with the overwhelming truth that she'd walked all the way from being a runaway girl to being loved, chosen, and home. After the vows, Elijah hung the old Twin Rivers branding iron above the porch. Not as a threat, he told May softly, but as proof we outlived the fire. Years slipped by like gentle creek water. Children's laughter replaced gunshots. Isaiah grew tall, teaching ranch kids, black, white, Mexican, to read and ride. May and Elijah welcomed 2 children of their own, both bright-eyed and stubborn. Evenings found the entire family on the porch, the little ones playing with wooden brands Elijah carved, symbols not of ownership, but belonging. One sunset, May leaned against Elijah and whispered, "I'm not running anymore." "You're home," he answered, kissing her hair. And she was. In the wide valley once broken by violence, with the man who refused to look away, with the family they built from ashes. May Harper finally found her forever place, a place rooted in truth, held together by love, and lit by a quiet, unshakable hope. Here's a warm, gentle 100-word conclusion crafted especially for an audience over 65. Thank you for riding with us through this journey of courage, healing, and the kind of love that grows stronger after every storm. Stories like this remind us that it's never too late to choose hope, to stand for what's right, and to find family in unexpected places. If this tale touched your heart even a little, please give the video a like. It truly helps. And if you'd enjoy more Western stories told in this warm, soulful style, feel free to subscribe. I'd also love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Your voices and memories mean the world.